2 balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. This is way back. Walk the ball.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Matthew Moreno. And Matt, 4 hours ago, I wasn't sure if we were going to have anything to talk about. Since then, the Dodgers have signed 2 players. Juan Soto signed the biggest contract in Major League history, and we got a couple things on our to-do list.
I know. I feel like we're gonna be pushing 2 hours or something crazy tonight with everything there is. I mean, we'll see how it goes. Obviously, there's no telling what might still come down the pipeline. I think obviously Teoscar Hernandez is the big name that now everybody is sort of watching. But yeah, I think we planned the 8:30 start time perfectly because we knew that there was going to be a lot of news, and so we didn't want to get caught in the middle of it. We wanted those details to be out and stuff like that, and then we'd start our live show. So just great planning by us, Jeff. I think that's the big takeaway tonight.
Totally. I was writing the tweet out, and I was like, well, yeah, and we should probably talk Arenado, and oh yeah, they're like one of the favorites for Crochet, so we'll have that. And here we are. We got real things to talk about. So we appreciate everybody joining us live on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. We are grateful to be here on a Sunday night, as we are every Sunday night, talking Dodgers with you all. And we'll start at the top. Juan Soto is not going to be a Dodger. He is going to be very, very rich, though. He signs a contract with the New York Mets, not the New York Yankees. It is, on one level, a 15-year, $765 million contract. That is not a misspeak by myself. 15 years, $765 million with a $75 million signing bonus. However, if you thought $765 million was crazy, let me introduce you to a wrinkle in this contract. Juan Soto can opt out after 5 years, if he so chooses, after making $255 million. But if the Mets don't want him to opt out, they can trigger a clause where they raise his salary from $51 to $55 million over the last 10 years, and he doesn't have a choice, but he gets to stick around. So if that's the case, this will be a, wait for it, 15-year, $805 million contract, fully guaranteed. Oh, by the way, no deferrals either, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're Steve Cohen and the Mets. Credit. Well, first, congratulations to Teoscar Hernandez on this contract. And obviously, whether it's 765 or 805, whatever the final number ends up being, he has broken Shohei Ohtani's record for the richest contract in baseball and North American sports history. So I think that was, once bidding got to a certain frenzy over the past week, I think we all sort of knew, okay, that's clearly a goal for Soto and Scott Boras that they probably shared. So congratulations to them on that. The other part of it is, yeah, I mean, I imagine that there's going to be a ton of uproar from other fans, from other teams over the Mets going out and spending this type of money and just paying for it all up front and not worrying about it. That shows some real financial might that Steve Cohen has. And I just hope that, the Dodgers and Guggenheim can really find a way to kind of compete with those type of pockets, because to be able to say 765 million, maybe 805, we don't need to defer it. Yes, we can do it now. And the signing bonus that he's getting, that's a pretty wealthy owner there. And hey, more power to him.
Yeah, there was a Freudian slip. You said initially, congratulations to Teoscar Hernandez, which, look, congratulations to Teoscar Hernandez also, because 765 to 800 million for Juan Soto is also worthy of congratulations for Teoscar Hernandez, who is now going to have the Yankees, who reportedly offered $750 million, the Red Sox, the Dodgers, all among the Blue Jays, all among teams that I'm sure will shift their attention to Teoscar Hernandez. But let's stay on Soto for a second. Obviously, he stays in the National League, which, if we beggars can't be choosers here, but it would have been nice if he was playing on the opposite side of the postseason bracket for the time being. But Juan Soto's a guy that's going to be in the life of the Dodgers now, it seems, for the next 15 years. And I see people saying, I can't believe he made more money than Shohei Ohtani. Yes, totally fair. Keep in mind that the next contract is always bigger than the last contract. Like, Patrick Mahomes signed the biggest contract ever for a quarterback, and then at some point he will not be the highest paid quarterback because he won't have signed most recently. I think 700 million from Ohtani was a number that didn't seem real until it was. And now when Juan Soto starts the bidding, it's like, well, 700 is a real number. So let's talk about it. You were not interested anywhere near this amount of money for the Dodgers. So I imagine, I don't know. Would you describe yourself as relieved that the Dodgers didn't hand out this contract, or sort of indifferent? Where are you at?
I'm relieved that Juan Soto's decision is in.
Okay.
And I felt this way. It was interesting because, sorry, I'm not going to answer. I'm going to do a little bit of a tangent before I circle back to everything. It's all going to make sense. Nez Bolelo, Shohei Ohtani's agent, recently did an interview with Bob Nightingale. That was USA Today. It was rather it was interesting. A lot of in-depth stuff, kind of looking back on everything. One of the topics they discussed was Ohtani's free agency and how that was handled with a ton of secrecy and kind of clear directives from Ohtani's camp of, hey, like, we don't want any leaks. And there was the threat, if you leak anything, then you're out. And so everybody freaked out because Dave Roberts then sat at the winter meetings and said, yes, we met with Shohei Ohtani. He was the only person to do something like that. Everybody worried the Dodgers were going to be eliminated, this and that. And he kind of compared it to, and what the other thing Nez brought up was, even with that, there was still the erroneous report that Ohtani was signing with the Blue Jays, that he was on a plane to Toronto. And he said he felt bad for Blue Jays fans in that country for getting their hopes up, and that was something they wanted to avoid. Soto situation, like, I felt like we were getting, I'll say, updates loosely every day. It was always like, oh, Dodgers, Mets, Yankees, Blue Jays, Red Sox are bidding.
Yeah.
And then they, oh, Dodgers, Yankees, Mets, Red Sox, Blue Jays still bidding. Oh, the price is now here. Like, it was like updates, but not really. And honestly, they got really tiring and annoying, and I was just ready for his decision to be made. And so, for us in kind of the content business, if you will, like, usually, rumors being dragged on is good for us because it gives us something to talk about. But in this sense, and maybe it's just me, I don't know, it was starting to get tiresome, and I was just ready for his decision to be made. So that's that.
Yeah.
The other part, to answer your question, I am really no, I don't think, I want to be careful with the wording here because, like I started off saying, credit to Juan Soto and Scott Boras for getting the contract that you did. Juan Soto is immensely talented. I'm not going to debate that. And I understand your point. We see it in basketball, right? Like, random players end up being the highest paid for just because they happen to be, like Mike Conley, right? Pretty good all-star, good point guard. He was the highest paid player in the NBA at one point in time. And it's like, well, Mike Conley, like, in the league with some of these superstars, like, didn't make sense, but that's just how stuff works. So yes, this is kind of a byproduct of that. I still don't see it though. Like, Shohei Ohtani got to $700 million because he's a hitter, a superstar level hitter, and at worst an all-star caliber pitcher.
Yeah.
2-1. And I remember some of our early shows last offseason, Blake saying, hey, I think he's going to get $700 million. I think you and I might have been on with him. And I definitely said, Blake, you're crazy. Like, what are you talking about? Shohei Ohtani ended up getting $700 million, but I could reconcile that.
Yeah.
Juan Soto, like, it's not just that he's only an outfielder, but he also, like, I've brought up time and time again, and maybe I am somebody who values defense a little bit more than others, but I have raised those questions of, hey, like, there's some defensive concerns out there as well. And so to get 765, possibly 805, it's kind of crazy. Again, credit to him for putting himself in that position. I don't get it. And baseball, we've seen time. It's not basketball, right? Where you can go and pay this much money to a superstar because, maybe he can end up leading you to an NBA championship.
Yeah.
Baseball doesn't work that. Like, Juan Soto alone, in my opinion, is not going to get the Mets to the World Series or win the World Series. Like, the sport, it's just a different sport. And so, again, credit to him for getting that contract. Like, I don't want to say like he doesn't deserve it or this and that, but I don't understand it.
Yeah. And when I say, I don't think Juan Soto is more valuable than Shohei Ohtani. So when we talk about these numbers, I want to make that abundantly clear. What doesn't surprise me, as I kind of hinted at, is that the guy who signed second in those two and 12 months later got a bigger deal. That's not surprising to me. That's just the way, for whatever reason in sports, contracts have worked. They are perpetually increasing, it feels like, at all times. And Juan Soto is a generational player. And so, no, he is not Shohei Ohtani, but he's in a different stratosphere from every other free agent this year and every other free agent basically not named Shohei Ohtani for the past 3 or 4 years in either direction. And so I think this is an insane number from the perspective of I never would have guessed it was going to get this high. Yeah. And yet I think he's really, really good. And so kudos to him for signing it. I'm when people say, like, are you glad? Like, I asked you, are you relieved the Dodgers didn't give him this contract? If the Dodgers had given him this contract, guess how much it would have impacted my life? Like, very little. It's not like they would have been pinching pennies around the corner because they signed Juan Soto. So it's not my money. I would have loved to see Juan Soto wearing a Dodger uniform because he's very good. And yet, if we're talking realistically and the Dodgers, having some plan to eventually avoid the luxury tax, then yeah, having this type of salary on the books for the next 15 years, I can understand. I was fine. I was comfortable closer to 500 million, and people thought I was crazy for suggesting that was a real number. Turns out I was crazy because I was only 2/3 of the way there. So shout out to Scott Boras, shout out to Juan Soto. And I already know all the questions we're getting about Teoscar Hernandez and what that means. And we're going to get to that here in just a second. But it's crazy town for Juan Soto, but kudos to him. And look, I think it's funny he didn't go to the Yankees. Like, I think it's funny that Steve Cohen just said, who cares? No deferrals, 765 to 800 million paid out over the next 16 years. Good stuff for him. So let's get to some of these super chats here. Lucas says, dominoes falling, Teo, Kike, Sasaki, and then let's freaking go. Yeah, look, it's going to be here before Teoscar, Kike, Sasaki, all. I guess Sasaki's not technically on the market yet, expected to be posted this week, but those other two guys still out there. I like this from Sai. Said, of all the teams that were in on Soto and missed out, the least unhappy are the Dodgers. We are fine as long as we sign Teoscar. Let's go Dodgers. We're going to get to that. The tease is reports are the Dodgers are still on Teoscar. Okay. I know that we're going to get to the guy they did sign, but reports are from Fabian Ardai and Ken Rosenthal is that does not exclude the Dodgers from Teoscar Hernandez. Zenji says, so glad the Yankees misery is going on 7 weeks now. Also, is a Treinen Teo Roki week? Is it a Treinen Teo Roki week? Roki Sasaki will not be signing until after January 15th. So you'll have to wait on that. Treinen, as we'll get to, is a Dodger for the next 2 seasons. Teoscar Hernandez. Look, I wouldn't be surprised, Matt, if by the time we're finished tonight, Teoscar Hernandez is signed somewhere. Like, would you?
Not completely, although I feel like there was this stuff tends to happen in waves. And so we got like momentum with a bunch of things. I mean, look, Michael Conforto was the big first outfield signing tonight. So he was ahead of Teoscar Hernandez, but then the Blake Treinen stuff came out. And so I felt like maybe at that point we might get Teoscar news. But on the other hand, Teoscar's agent could be saying, hey, like Juan Soto just got 700, anywhere from 765 to 805 million. You guys all missed out on him. Our guy, suddenly he wants an extra 5 to 10 or whatever the case may be. Like there might be a little bit of leverage now. If you guys were all going to spend this much money on Juan Soto, let's see what, from an agent's perspective, you wouldn't be doing your due diligence without trying to squeeze out the best deal for your client. And so that might take, another night of negotiating.
Yeah. Richard, as expected, no Soto. He says, I'm happier than Barry Bonds in a PED store. Congratulations, Richard. You have been the most outspoken super chat anti-Juan Soto guy, so congratulations to you. Juan Soto, Scott Boras, and you in that particular order, Richard. Freedom says, is it true that Soto went to the Mets for 15 for 765? What a waste. They are going nowhere. The Mets are hilarious. 2 years ago, they sold everybody. They had guys under contract. They were trading them away. They were sellers at the deadline, and they were just eating money. And then last year, they go to the NLCS. So, I mean, crazy things could happen in baseball. You made a great point, Matt. One player has far less of an impact on the sport of baseball than pretty much any other sport that is out there. So Juan Soto's very good, but he only comes up once out of every 9 times. He's not a very good defender, and it's not football where even one person like the quarterback can have such a great influence on the course of a game. As a hitter, you get 4 or 5 trips to the plate, and a lot of it's dependent on our guys on base in front of you, who's the pitcher, all sorts of things. So I wouldn't say quite they're going nowhere, but it is hard to pay this amount of money for a guy that guarantees you nothing.
That, and I wonder if I'll venture to guess that Steve Cohen is going to become the biggest proponent of the golden at bat rule.
Yeah, exactly. Golly, don't even get me started on that. Stockton Slap says, what does Conforto signing mean for Teo? Please explain. And then Dodger Rich G says, what route do the Dodgers take if Teo signs somewhere else? So let's get into these two comments here, and let's talk about Michael Conforto and the move that the Dodgers did make. If you missed it in all of the Juan Soto news, the Dodgers did make a signing, and they made it first. Michael Conforto signed to a 1-year, $17 million contract. $8.5 million of that is a signing bonus. Part of that is deferred. I joked with you. I don't know how you can defer a signing bonus. I thought a signing bonus meant it's all coming up front, but there are reports that some of this money is deferred. Unsurprisingly, coming into the live show, Matt, we were going to talk about who the outfield options were that the Dodgers might have on their radar. A, in case Teoscar Hernandez didn't sign, but B, there were reports the Dodgers were planning on signing 2 outfielders with Mookie Betts moving into the infield. And so they make a move on Michael Conforto. And this was a guy, Matt, that was on my list of options. I had I had 4 names on my list. Michael Conforto was at the top of guys that I thought the Dodgers might be interested in. And I'll give you the why behind it, and then you can give me your thoughts on this. The reports were they were looking for a left-handed hitting outfielder. Conforto checks that box. He has crushed righties, so the Dodgers, we know, like platoons, like playing advantages. He has a 128 weighted runs created plus for his career against righties, which has never been below 100. He was a 102 last year, but that was the worst. The other piece here is the Dodgers and Giants tend to be in on the same players, because Farhan Zaidi was there. He is now back. Conforto signed a big contract with the Giants, so I was like, if the Giants liked him, chances are the Dodgers liked him 2 years ago. He is a below-average defensive player, but arm strength is one area that he excels. But this is a guy that, I think is an interesting piece here, Matt. And so before we get into some of the nerd stats on Michael Conforto, I would love to get your thoughts really quick on reactions to the news that 1 year, $17 million for Michael Conforto.
Yeah, my initial reaction was, man, 17 million, even though it's only 1 year, 17 million kind of seems like a lot, but I think that that's just the market. And it's more of like kind of the role players, the platoon guys that you're used to signing, like their prices have gone up as well. And that's, good for the sport, good for the players. The teams might argue that it's not good for them, but I think, if there's more money to be spent, clearly it's coming in, there's interest in all that stuff. So big picture wise, like it's good.
Yeah.
I think, from a player standpoint, there's low risk on top of it. Basically, it's 1 year, and he does fit, like as you mentioned, and I know you're going to further highlight here in a minute or two how much Conforto fits the Dodgers mold and what they sort of need. So it's fine. I mean, it makes sense. I think there could be, at the risk of tipping what you're about to show, I think there could be a similar Teoscar Hernandez resurgence, maybe not quite as like 100 percentile result based, but definitely an uptick on a season. I mean, I guess we need to be careful with how we word it, because Conforto does literally fall into the Teoscar 2023 of, hey, he struggled at home but was better on the road and stuff like that. And so instead of taking the rug out from under you, I'll let you get into all that.
Yeah. So if you're watching this on YouTube, I just threw 2 charts up. One of these is Teoscar Hernandez Baseball Savant page in 2023, heading into the offseason in which the Dodgers went and signed him. The other of these is Michael Conforto's 2024 Baseball Savant page, heading into the offseason in which the Dodgers signed him. And if you look at these two, and I made people guess, left or right, which one do you think was Teoscar in 2023, and which one do you think was Michael Conforto in 2024? I think a lot of people would be surprised to find out which one is which here, because I think one of these, just at first glance, where dark red is very good, red is above average, light blue is sort of average to below average, and then dark blue is really, really bad. You're looking at the one on the left here, and there's way more red on the one on the left than there is on the right. Well, guess what? Michael Conforto in 2024 is the player on the left. Teoscar Hernandez is out here as the player on the right. And Teoscar Hernandez obviously worked out really, really well for the Dodgers. He's a very good player. None of this is a dig on Teoscar Hernandez. This is simply a pointing out that Michael Conforto may be a better player than you acknowledge, than many people remember and realize. You mentioned the home and road splits. I thought that was interesting. He had an 852 OPS away from Oracle Park, one of the, depending on how you look at it, not exactly a favorable place to hit unless you like hitting the ball into left center field and right center field. But he performed really well away from home, as we've talked about. He's a left-handed hitter who crushes righties. And so when I look at this, Matt, I'm encouraged by what I see from Michael Conforto. 89th percentile expected slugging percentage, 80th percentile barrel rate, 76th percentile chase rate. The swing and miss is, whiff rate, 45th percentile. League average is pretty dang good for a Dodger. You can see the range. He's not a great fielder, does have a strong arm, so maybe that plays in right field. But I guess I'm just saying all this to point out I'm surprised at how well Michael Conforto graded out last year, because I don't think of him as a player whose page might look like this.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm seeing, some of the chat saying Conforto is just a platoon guy. I know Blake was tweeting about some of his different stats earlier tonight, kind of shortly after the signing was reported. And Blake has thrown out there that maybe he doesn't necessarily need to be platoon, because there is some reason to believe he could fare well against, or at least hold his own against left-handed pitchers. And another thing that Blake also brought up as reason for optimism was Conforto's kind of batted ball luck. And so some of that should, like he didn't have a lot of luck. And so if you believe in that stuff, there should be some regression to the mean.
Nerds, that Matt, where do the eye test guys, how do they feel about luck?
Yeah, I haven't decided yet. And the reason what I always like to throw at you guys when I hear about the hard contact rate and stuff like that is Josh Reddick. All I heard after the Dodgers traded for him was, hey, he's hitting the ball hard. He's hitting the ball hard. It's going to fall eventually. That eventually never came. So I'm torn on batted ball stuff. But if you subscribe to that theory, then there should be even more optimism on top of some of the stuff that Jeff just laid out with that chart.
And I want to emphasize, I'd love, like, reading the chat brings me joy, because it's like, if you talk about Juan Soto, it's like anybody who loves Teoscar Hernandez will hear nothing. They're not allowed to feel positive things about any outfielder that is not named Teoscar Hernandez. And I want to emphasize this. This is from Fabian Ardaya. Quote, adding Conforto may not affect the Dodgers' chances of re-upping with Hernandez. The Dodgers remain interested in bringing him back, according to league sources. So everybody who wants to crap on Conforto to protect your Teoscar stock, you can have both, folks. You don't have to choose. There's 2 corner outfield spots that are currently unaccounted for the Dodgers. One is now at least halfway accounted for with Conforto, depending on how much of a platoon he is in. But when you look at the Dodgers, kind of the way that they could construct their lineup, if you think about the Dodgers maybe platooning things, and I'm even imagine a scenario where Gavin Lux is still on this roster, okay? Against right-handed pitchers, you could have Mookie Betts playing shortstop, Gavin Lux playing second base, Conforto / Pages in one corner, Teoscar in the other, and Tommy Edman in center field. But when a lefty comes on, they could pull Gavin Lux from second base. They could slide Mookie Betts to second. Edman could come in and play center field. And then all of a sudden you've got Pages, Conforto, and Teoscar Hernandez potentially still in the outfield, right? So there is room for both of these guys, depending on, and I know there's probably going to be people saying, why is Pages platooning? He's too young. Sure. Keep in mind that, like, this is assuming everybody's healthy. You would rather have 4 outfielders for 3 spots and platoon a couple guys and then say, hey, if we get to a spot where, these guys have to hit against righties or lefties or whatever. So I'm just laying out the facts that, according to Fabian Ardaya, according to Ken Rosenthal, this, I don't want to say has nothing to do with what the Dodgers do on the Teoscar Hernandez front, but according to league sources, they are still in on Teoscar Hernandez.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to say it. I'll say it. Michael Conforto has literally nothing to do with what the Dodgers are trying to get done with Teoscar Hernandez. Absolutely zero. So there doesn't need to be any concern. He would be Michael Conforto. Man, the chat, I'm seeing them going crazy. There's nothing from Ken Rosenthal just yet. I thought maybe Teoscar had signed in the middle of my sentence. No, yeah, there's no need to worry. Like, Conforto basically is filling the Jason Hayward role that, the Dodgers did get to a point this past season where they needed to get rid of Hayward, or I know a lot of fans are saying, Chris Taylor should have been the choice, this and that. Andrew Friedman told us after Blake Snell's press conference, his goal is to not have to do anything at the trade deadline. And he has said this before, like, he hates the trade deadline because the prices are so high and this and that. And he had the caveat that obviously if the Dodgers are in a position of need, that they will do whatever's necessary. But his goal is to do everything they need to do during the offseason to put the team together and just go into the regular season that way and hopefully make it, kind of wire to wire. Obviously, I'm sure Friedman would admit, and he did say that they'll do things if they have to, but the odds of that obviously aren't very high of not making any sort of trades, especially the Dodgers. They're always claiming some guy off of waivers as well, stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, there's no reason to be worried. Like, Michael Conforto can be a platoon guy, or if he starts a little bit more than maybe people are thinking right now, like, so be it.
Yeah. I'm glad you went even stronger than I did. Again, I'm just trying to lay out, like, Conforto, even if he is an everyday guy, which I think, look, if you're playing against right-handed pitching, you're basically an everyday guy because 75% of the days you're going to see a right-handed pitcher on the mound. But even if he's just against righties, and, like, is Pages going to be an everyday guy and Conforto going to be an everyday guy and Gavin Lux going to be an everyday guy? Like, the answer to those 3 questions is not yes in all 3. And so there's at least one more spot available in the starting lineup. And if Chris Taylor's still on this roster, I don't think he's a starting everyday guy. If Kike Hernandez is signed, I don't think he's an everyday guy. And so barring another move that might happen, right? There's all sorts of things rumored about whether Gavin Lux is going to be back, whether there's a Nolan Arenado trade in the works, whatever. Like, sure, that could change things. But I would just add, if Gavin Lux gets traded, that means there's more of a need for a guy like Teoscar Hernandez because they can shuffle pieces around. And now you need, if Tommy Edmonds playing shortstop, you need an extra outfielder on top of it if Pages is playing center. So I think if you're a Teoscar Hernandez fan, I would not be worried about the Michael Conforto signing. The reports were that in addition to Teoscar Hernandez, they were looking for, I believe at one point it was labeled a Jason Hayward type. I think Michael Conforto is way, way better than Jason Hayward. I think Michael Conforto is a poor man's Teoscar Hernandez, if I'm being honest. Again, looking at some of the numbers and the batted ball data, I think you're going to be encouraged by a lot of that. But I think there is going to be room for Teoscar Hernandez on this roster if the money gets to it. So let's get to a couple super chats here. Johnny says, what are the chances we see Showtime in the outfield? 0%, Matt? What do you think?
Yeah, 0. I mean, and if I could give it a negative %, then I would, but it's 0.
300 says, if Teo really wants to stay with the Dodgers, he should not overplay his hand. Look, he's got all the cards on his side of the table, because if the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Blue Jays are all calling, I imagine he's going to have to make a decision at some point, because I would guess those teams are willing to offer him more money than the Dodgers would be willing to offer him. People aren't going to like this. It's worth pointing out there is a small piece of incentive for the Dodgers to let Teoscar Hernandez walk, which is because he was offered a qualifying offer, the Dodgers would receive draft pick compensation back if he were to sign somewhere else. So I'm just throwing that out there. But I think at some point the Dodgers are going to make him a fair offer, would be my guess. Probably a bigger offer than they expected themselves to be making him 2 or 3 months ago. I imagine it will not be the biggest, and then it will be up to Teoscar. Do I want to take slightly less money, maybe even and one less year, to stay in a place that I like with the chance to win, or do I want to go somewhere else? That's how I see this playing out. I don't know what he would choose, but that's just my guess, my read on the situation, Matt.
Yeah, I could see that being the case. And one thing I wanted to mention earlier, and I'll do it now, is Soto, in my opinion, Soto signing with the Mets is the worst case scenario for the Dodgers, because we had heard from plugged in kind of Boston specific media that the Red Sox were really making an earnest effort with Soto, and they were kind of operating differently than they had been in free agency the past few years. And so they come up empty. So, but I think there is motivation from Boston to do something.
I do want to. I have buddies who are Red Sox fans. They have loved every report of how in on every guy the Red Sox have been, and you'll notice they have yet to sign anybody. So I would be skeptical. Walker Buehler, his name. I think they're heavily interested in lots of guys, and my friends who are Red Sox fans will tell you, until these people spend money, I will not believe any of it for what it's worth.
Fair, but at least that narrative is out there, right?
True.
So maybe they are more motivated this winter than prior years. The Yankees clearly need to do something now. Like their fan base is a mess. So I think between those two scenarios, now you have the Red Sox and Yankees. Like, is one of them willing to significantly, I don't want to say overpay, because I feel like that carries a negative connotation and kind of diminishes Teoscar's value, but to add on extra dollars that maybe wouldn't have been there, that maybe the Dodgers aren't comfortable going to. So that's what, and I know we have more super chats coming, and I see even just the regular chat, like people are worried about what if Teoscar Hernandez isn't back with the Dodgers. But I agree with you. Like he does have the leverage right now.
Shelly says, please reassure me that we will sign Teoscar. I need to be able to sleep. I would still put the Dodgers as the favorite to sign Teoscar Hernandez. To your point, like maybe it's closer to like 51-49 with all the other teams split among the 49% of him going somewhere else. I would still expect Teoscar Hernandez to be a Dodger. I would be less surprised, however, if some deal comes out where he gets like a fourth year and it's, 28 million instead of 22, 25 million a year. Like I could just see that happening because of the desperation of some of these teams involved.
Yeah, I agree. I still do think that they're the favorite, but it's getting close to dicey. And so, Shelly, I apologize. Hopefully you had me on mute the past couple minutes when I was outlining how the Red Sox and Yankees could potentially be a big threat.
Stockton Slap says the Dodgers know the world is ending in 5 to 6 years. That's why they have no problem deferring all the money. Joke is on the players. They'll never see it. That's one way to look at it. That would be chestnut checkers. Freedom says, you got to be kidding. Why is Zaidi back? He was fired from the Giants. Finally got the best Buster Posey Giants. Will get hot again. Our hated rivals. if you asked me to trust my franchise to either Buster Posey or Farhan Zaidi, I would pick Farhan Zaidi 105 times out of 100. That's just me. I think the Giants, the story about Buster Posey and how they run things over there, I'm glad I root for the Dodgers. I'll leave it at that. That is a dysfunctional dumpster fire, in my opinion.
Perhaps, but Buster Posey does get some credit for filling a big need that they had, right? With a marquee player and signing Willy Adames. Like,
yeah, I mean, yeah, sure.
I think, look, the turn, like, I'm not the high man on Willy Adames by any means. I think he is a talented player, though. And so, like, that is a position of need. Shortstop was a position of need for them. You said Buster Posey or Farhan Zaidi. The good news is, if you really want to look at it, it's Buster Posey versus Andrew Friedman and a long list of executive Brandon Gomes helping him. Yes, that's, in my opinion, not a question or anything to really worry about.
Stockton says Yankees want Teo. Now that Soto is out, he's plan B. We mentioned that. He says Lux and Pages for the Crochet trade. We're going to talk Garrett Crochet here in a little bit. They would need to be more in that package than that, but maybe a place to start.
Five other players that maybe need to be included in that.
Freedom says, when will Friedman wake up and get ownership to sign Teo or lose him for good? So happy LA didn't sign Soto. Tim G asks, will Teoscar sign for over 100 million now? He says 4 times 25. Do you think the number's higher than that?
It'll be just under that because the Dodgers won't necessarily go to 100 million, but it'll be just under that.
What's the net present value, Matt? Do you think somewhere in the 75 to 85 range?
Probably.
Yeah. Look, every contract that has come in has been over the projection on The Athletic, MLB trade rumors, Conforto included. I mean, Conforto, the highest number on Conforto was 1 year, 15 million. There were people, I think trade rumors had 2 for 18. The Athletic had 1 for 10. So, we've seen it with pitchers as well. All these guys are doing better than expected. I think Teoscar, I was expecting somewhere in the 3 for 75 range. So 4 for 25, 4 for 100 would be good on him. Stockton Slap says, I feel relieved we locked up Treinen, $11 million a year as a deal. We're going to get to Treinen here in a second. He says, chances we re-sign Kike seems bleak. I think the Treinen move tells me that, these moves are happening under the radar. I still think Kike's coming back. Do you have any dip in confidence that Kike's a Dodger?
Nothing since the last time. I know we discussed this about a week ago on Sunday's show, and I thought, I think I had him as maybe the least confident among Treinen and Teoscar, if I'm remembering correctly. Nothing has changed, in my opinion, since then. I think it could be a similar scenario to what we saw unfold when Kike was a free agent last offseason, where he's willing to he understands the Dodgers might have to do some other things. I think in this case, it's going to be trading Chris Taylor. It was trading Manny Margot, who they had just acquired last offseason with the Glasnow deal. So I think he's fine. There's dialogue. Just because stuff isn't out there, they are discussing things, and I'm sure Friedman is letting him know, hey, maybe we need to do this, and this first, and then we'll be able to circle back. But these are kind of the parameters we're looking at, and it's kind of loose conversations that way.
Jonathan says Soto and Pages is greater than Teo and Conforto, and for less AAV as Soto losers will overpay Teo. Thus D like Soto, but older with only 1 4+ WAR year. Love him, but geez. Teoscar and Conforto will probably be less of an AAV between the two of them. If you guess around 25, that adds up to 42. Soto is going to start at 51. Pages, of course, making the minimum. So I see the point, the comparison of basically Soto versus splitting this money between Teoscar and Conforto. But again, the Dodgers are going to go out and sign 2 of these guys to start with anyways. And so it's not Soto versus Teoscar and Conforto. It's Soto and Conforto versus Teoscar and Conforto, or something along those lines. But yeah, look, I love Teoscar Hernandez. I hope that he's back. I also am understanding of the people who are a little bit skeptical of Teoscar Hernandez, and he had a great season last year. All the concerns about defense with Soto, I think, are valid with Teoscar as well. He's older. I think these are all real concerns. It doesn't dissuade me from wanting him, but it's why getting past 3 years has me a little bit worried.
Yeah, that's all fair. I think still for me, the biggest thing is at most we're looking at 4 years compared to 15. And still at the end of the day, it's not going to be $765 million. And I might be although I feel like I have plenty of support in the chat. I was going to say I might be the low man on Soto, but I think there are people who think less of him than I do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I get it. Look, the odds of Teoscar repeating the year he just had aren't necessarily very high, so there probably will be some regression. But the biggest upset in all this is Jonathan not sliding in a Danny Duffy reference into his super chat tonight.
There you go. There you go. Kevin says Soto didn't go back to New York. Why would Teo come back? I think it's safe to say Teoscar's relationship with LA is far greater than Juan Soto's relationship with New York. Juan Soto was like openly discussing signing for every team in the world immediately after in like his post game 5 like scrum, whereas Teoscar Hernandez told everybody that would listen for 3 weeks he hopes he's a Dodger. So I think there's a greater affinity between one of these two people and the team that's interested. Miel says, I'm worried the Dodgers will lose Teo. Prove me wrong. Wait and see. I mean, we agree. We think Teoscar's coming back. Matt and I both agree that we think Teoscar's coming back, that the Dodgers are favorite. So hopefully we're right. Hopefully we're right. David says Soto to the Mets. Guaranteed they miss the playoffs. So look, Francisco Lindor had an unbelievable season, his best season in a while. Pete Alonso might not be back. Their pitching staff is held together with duct tape and, Band-Aids, I think. So, the Mets, there's a lot of question marks remain.
Stranger things have happened.
It's true. It's true. Jonathan says the AL doesn't deserve to send a team to the World Series next year. Hey, look, Juan Soto started in the National League last year, ended in the American League, but he started in the NL West. Freedom says, I'm going to tell you youngsters straight out. I don't give a flying flip if the Yankees ever win a World Series. 27 is plenty. You're in good company, Freedom. None of us care about the Yankees either. So, can we, somebody said it. What a rough stretch. October 30th to now, if you're a Yankees fan, can you imagine, Matt?
No, yeah, that would be brutal. Look, there's still a chance for them to sort of rebound, although I don't know from a position player side, not really, unless you go out and make some blockbuster trade for,
yeah.
But even then, look, I get Juan Soto is a great. I saw you called him a generational player, and we got a bunch of corrections in the chat saying he's a generational hitter. So I'm going to choose my words wisely and say he is a great hitter. Potential to be, not potential. I'm sure he'll be a Hall of Fame player. But yeah, if you're the Yankees, it's tough to pivot. Even if, like we said, they do get Teoscar Hernandez, like that, I don't think that fan base will be satisfied. I think it'll need to be like Teoscar and who else are you guys bringing in at this point?
Listen to this quote from Jeff Passan. This was on SportsCenter with Scott Van Pelt. Quote, I think Juan Soto looked at the New York Mets future and believed that the Mets have a better future than the Yankees. That hurts. Can you imagine being a Yankees fan and listening to that?
Yeah.
Not wrong.
It's been kind of building towards that way. Like I think Steve Cohen is who a segment of Los Angeles sports fans think Steve Ballmer is.
Yeah.
And the Mets are making a little bit of headway, whereas that other team over here in Southern California, they have a nice new arena, I've heard. I haven't been there yet, but new arena that opened, a decent record so far, but still, at the end of the day, nothing to really show for it yet. So there's still a lot of work to be done for both.
Hey, that's the beauty of being filthy rich in baseball, is you could do whatever the heck you want. You don't have to worry about a literal salary cap and all that sort of thing. Steve Cohen can literally just keep paying more money for Juan Soto, and the cost to him will be more money will be the cost. So there you go. Hawaiian Kira. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, before we get to that super chat, Pinsanity is saying or we could throw it up. The Mets had a better chance at beating the Dodgers in their series than the Yankees did. I strongly disagree with that.
Yeah.
And I was on here during the NLCS saying this series is boring. There's no drama. There's no concern. The Mets won 1.5 out of the 2 games that the Mets won during that series. 1.5 of them were because of Dave Roberts choosing to punt and, kind of picking his strategy with the bullpen and pitching. So
yeah,
insanity. Yes, he's saying the Mets won more games. Because Dave Roberts punted. Once the Dodgers got to the World Series, the punting was over. It was 4-down territory every time. Yeah.
Touche. What he said. Look, all that mattered was the Padres. Once they beat the Padres, it was a victory lap from there. We do have a super chat here from Hawaiian Kira. With Treinen back, will there be a closer in the regular season or a closer by committee. That was the other contract that the Dodgers signed. Blake Treinen, a 2-year, $22 million contract to return to the Dodgers. This was a guy we both had high confidence would be back with the Dodgers. There were no real notes, no reports. I think there was a quote from Blake Treinen. Was it? He went on Foul Territory recently. Quote, "I would welcome with open arms any type of deal to bring me back there." I'm guessing he knew a couple things when he made that quote to Alana Rizzo and friends. But he's back. And this is great news because Blake Treinen, when he is healthy, which as long as that's in the postseason, you feel good about it. I think you can make the case he's like one of the 5 best relief pitchers in baseball. And he was huge, obviously, for the Dodgers in that game 5. I mean, he was a guy that should never be forgotten in Dodgers history because of what he did in game 5 of the World Series against the Yankees. I'm just thrilled he's back because he's a gamer, he's a vet, and he's absolutely disgusting when things are right.
Yeah, the only thing I don't understand is if Blake Treinen did send out that quote of he's open to any type of contract, what are the Dodgers doing paying him $22 million? They should have just signed him for 2 years, $10 million and called it a day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in all seriousness, yes, this was a likely scenario, and I think an important one for the Dodgers bullpen. Brusdar Graterol's obviously had off-season surgery. He's not going to be ready until after the All-Star break. Daniel Hudson's retiring.
Your guy, Joe Kelly.
Joe Kelly is currently a free agent. Maybe we can't necessarily rule out a return just yet. I mean, there's been nothing to suggest that he would or won't be back, but you never know. Evan Phillips, he said that his shoulder, that he potentially could have been back for the World Series with his shoulder issue, but he did have an injury at the end of the season. So keeping Treinen on the team and in the bullpen was on a necessity. And you said, when he's healthy, one of the top relief pitchers in baseball. And so, yeah, this was a great deal for both sides.
And going back to Kira's question, will there be a closer in the regular season or closer by committee? The Dodgers had, interestingly enough, I would say, they had a couple different sections of the season where they had a closer. Like Evan Phillips was closing out games for most of the first half of the season. When Daniel Hudson was healthy, he kind of became the de facto closer. Blake Treinen obviously missed big chunks of the season, but as much as there's this closer by committee kind of idea, it does feel like Dave Roberts prefers specific roles for guys just so on a day-to-day basis, people have some expectation. So I would kind of imagine, obviously Michael Kopech, by the way, another name to keep in mind who will be back this year. But between Kopech to me feels like the closer, and then you've got Treinen and Evan Phillips kind of floating around would be my guess.
Yes, and I think we're going to get we don't have a closer, but Michael Kopech happens to get the majority of the save opportunities type thing. Just I think from the standpoint of at this point that is clearly the culture in that the Dodgers want to have is just, making sure everybody is sort of ready for anything, whether it's injuries or just crazy things happening. So publicly, will Dave Roberts come out and say Michael Kopech is our closer? Probably not. But yes, I think he probably gets at least the initial chance to do it. And then, Blake Treinen and Evan Phillips, as you mentioned, kind of, maybe rotating in at various points.
Yeah. So, but again, look, Blake Treinen, Evan Phillips, Michael Kopech as a starting point, Alex Vesia in the mix, Anthony Bonda. I mean, we're cooking with gas in that bullpen, Matt.
Yeah, it's looking like a strong group, and I know they want to see Tanner Scott added. I wouldn't necessarily count. I don't see the Dodgers spending big on a relief pitcher. I see Devin Williams trade being asked about, maybe something like that. But I mean, he's under contract for just one more year. And so that becomes a matter of, if you're the Brewers, you don't want to just sell, for what's the cents on the dollar type thing, pennies on the dollar. And if you're the Dodgers, you're not necessarily going to want to give up a ton, one for a relief pitcher, two for somebody who might leave you then in free agency after a year. So that could get a little interesting. But yeah, I mean, I think the bullpen is certainly looking strong.
And this is what the Dodgers do, right? Is they're going to fill out this bullpen with a bunch of guys who are not high level cost. They've sort of got their few guys that they're going to pay for. And other than that, they're going to fill it in with the Anthony Bondas of the world, the Alex Vesias of the world, guys that are under team control already. Keep in mind, Ben Kasparius, Kyle Hurt. They've got some dudes that Kyle Hurt's coming off injury and I believe will miss part of, if not most of next season. But my point is they have guys, Justin Robleski, who could potentially be a part of the bullpen as a moving forward type of a situation. And so, they added the guy I'm blanking on his name. Dreyer. They added him, protected him from the 40-man roster. You've got guys like Michael Grove, who I know is not the most popular name, but on the 40-man roster as well. So they do have some options in the bullpen still.
And
even with that.
Yeah, and there's also, I mean, depending on what happens with everything, but maybe Dustin May ends up in the bullpen.
Yep.
I know that that's something people have been calling for a while. I don't know if they necessarily make that decision like on a full-time basis right now, but he is coming back from an elbow surgery, and it'll be his first full season, so there will be an innings limit. And if the Dodgers, if they do sign Roki Sasaki, if potentially Walker Buehler is back, like, and it, knock on wood, if there is reasonable health, they might not be room for somebody like Dustin May or Tony Gonsolin. And so at that point, maybe one of them needs to be sent to the bullpen for a stretch. Like, a lot of things could happen. But at this point right now, with the way the bullpen is, the starting off point for them, certainly looking encouraging.
Super chat here from Steven. We won free agency and we didn't even land Soto this year. Obviously, the Dodgers are off to a great start with Blake Snell, Michael Conforto, Blake Treinen, sort of the confirmed moves. Obviously, they locked up was it Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin? They kind of avoided arbitration already with the both of those guys as well. And so there's still moves to be made. Tommy Edman extension. Thank you. I knew there was one in my head that what I was missing, but so there's still moves to be made, right? You and I both think Teoscar Hernandez is possible, if not likely. We both think Kike Hernandez is likely, and Walker Buehler, I would imagine there's still in the mix a little bit for Walker Buehler would be my guess. And so I think the Dodgers, have some moves left to be made. So, and yes, and they've already had themselves a great free agency. Let's do this. We appreciate everybody in here, almost 3,400 people. We're going to take some questions. So if you've got any questions, throw those in the chat, all caps questions, and we will get to those. As we are waiting for that, Matt, I understand that you have a food topic that you'd like to just clarify here real quick. Sometimes we get a little fun with our questions. So go ahead, Matt. The floor is yours.
Yeah, this is so out of everything that's happened tonight, the biggest news from this Sunday night that we are here discussing baseball, and I'm going to do a sidebar, is I think I need to update the people on my favorite sandwich.
Oh,
I've been on here saying, Quiznos, the chicken bacon one is very good. It is, I've regarded it as my favorite, I think, for a while. I enjoy Philly cheesesteak, but that Quiznos one, I think maybe some of it too is a scarcity of not being able to find them anymore. But tonight I don't know, are you familiar with Mendocino Farms?
I've heard of it.
Okay, so they have a turkey avocado salsa verde sandwich.
Okay,
and it is very good. It's the salsa's hot and spicy. It adds great flavor to it. The sandwich has Gouda cheese and cotija cheese, so a little bit of Mexican flavor there. And it's I ate it tonight, and I was reminded how much I really enjoy it. And I think that has now vaulted to the top of my sandwich rankings.
Okay, there you go. Salsa verde sandwich. Can't say I've ever had anything like that. So
yeah, I hadn't either. I tried it a while ago, kind of just looking at their menu, and it seemed interesting. And it's good. There you go.
Updated the rankings. Quiznos and Mendocino Farms, two local restaurant places that nobody can find anywhere. So there you go. Hopefully you're in Southern California. But I love it. It sounds delicious. Again, you had me a turkey avocado, and then you mixed in a little, flavor on top of that. So I like that. Getting to some questions here. Mr. John, he corrected me. I forgot about Austin Barnes. Sure. So I think he was talking to you, actually, specifically, Matt, as the president of the Austin Barnes fan club. How dare you?
Yeah, my apologies. The longest tenured Dodger, Austin Barnes, 2-time World Series champion, the captain. The list goes on and on.
The captain. Yep. We got a couple Gavin Lux questions here. Ella Shiva says, what about Lux? Jay asks, is it too optimistic to think Gavin Lux can play shortstop next year after having a year to build up his leg and have confidence in it again? I have zagged. Well, everybody else is zigging and I am zagging. I'm pro Gavin Lux. This is a pro Gavin Lux position. We've stayed in our pro Gavin Lux. We held on to our stock. It netted us some nice returns in the second half of last season when everybody else was selling. I think Gavin Lux is, I don't want to say a very good player. I think he's a good player that cost the Dodgers very little. I think he's very good at defense at second base. I think the further he gets away from his knee injury, I think that's a big reason he had such an incredible second half of last season. He was like 13th in weighted runs created plus in the second half. I don't think he's that good, but I think he's very good. Fabian Ardaya was on here and he was like, look, the Dodgers have told us over and over again what they think about Gavin Lux. They've given him every opportunity to succeed. So to answer Jay's question, no, I do not think Gavin Lux should or could be playing shortstop. But I don't also agree with the people that like, it's like, oh, well, we just need to trade him just to open up a spot. I think he's valuable for the Dodgers where he's at.
I agree. I don't think they're looking at it as we have to trade Gavin Lux, but if he fits into something that they're trying to do, I know, we got asked about Garrett Crochet, and I think it was Lux and Pages were mentioned. If he's able to be included in something like that, then I think the Dodgers are willing to do it. But yeah, I mean, in terms of shortstop specifically, I think that ship has sailed.
Yeah, fair. We got some super chats here. Jonathan says, underlining the Teoscar desperation, Andrew Friedman can't develop outfielders. Since Peterson, Bellinger, the last regime, left its journeymen like Peralta, Hayward, and now Conforto. Look, Blake and Scott are on this train. All I can say is every single person that I talk to and we interview on the show, like Ben Badler from Baseball America last year, Lance Brozdowski is a guy we've had on a bunch. Like, they all laugh at this idea that the Dodgers can't develop hitters. Like, I'm just telling you, you can disagree with them. You are more than welcome to. They would tell you it's crazy. The Dodgers are probably going to have 3 hitters inside the top 40 or 50 in every top 100 list in Dalton Rushing, who's I guess now technically an outfielder, Josue DePaula, who's an outfielder, Zaire Hope, who's an outfielder. So I tend to agree with those guys and say if they think the Dodgers are good at developing hitters, then I think they're good at developing hitters. But I understand the track record that you're pointing to. But I think I would just say it's more complicated than that. I guess I'll leave it at that. Do you have any thoughts on this, Matt?
Not really, other than I think both things can be true. The Dodgers might have gone a stretch of years where they fell short in doing it, and now they are kind of back on the upswing with the guys that you mentioned.
Totally. Bob Nightingale, by the way, Matt's favorite sandwich is fettuccine Alfredo. So
I mean, if the bread is like a garlic bread or something, then you can probably sell me on at least trying it, Bob. So maybe I need to head out to Dallas and Bob can take me to a spot that he might know that'll do that.
Have I told you I had a food cart idea at one point? Have I
No.
told you about this? Oh, this is great. It was inspired by, I did a dinner night with friends and we would cook dinner and we had made pesto pasta. I think pesto is like one of the greatest sauces that's ever been invented. And we had tons of leftovers. And it's like leftover pasta is pretty good. You heat it up, but it's kind of a mess. And it's like, okay, if I have to take this into work, then it means I have to take a fork with it as well. And I probably got a napkin and now I'm carrying around a dirty Tupperware, the whole thing. So my food cart idea, Matt, you ready for this? Was to basically have wraps, like tortilla type wraps with pasta in them. And the food cart, you ready for this? It was going to be called the Rapture with a W. So we had this thing all stored up, but like, yes, just extra carbs inside of carbs on top of carbs. But like, tell me that wouldn't be good. If you had a good fettuccine Alfredo and you didn't have to carry around in a Tupperware and eat it with the fork or a bowl, but you could just have it in like a wrap of some sort. Come on.
Well, okay, but is the wrap a tortilla, or you were just using it as an example?
Whatever, like something. Okay. It could be like one of those spinach things. It could be like a cheese. I don't know.
Sure, as long as it's not, as long as it's not doing like fusion or anything crazy, then yeah.
No.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
See, people were into it. The Rapture. Iris likes it. She's in. So there you go. Yeah, and it's just carbs on carbs on carbs. It's the truth. Zenji asks, if Roki posts this week, could he not come out and say he's signing with the Dodgers, even if he can't officially sign until January 15th? That's a great question. I don't know.
The way this can work is he can reach a verbal agreement. Once he's posted, he could have meetings in one day and the next day say, okay, like I feel like I've made my decision. Like the odds are we're probably going to get a leak of who he's signing with or who he's going to sign with before he can actually sign. So theoretically, yes, I think he could come out and say, you know what, after the past 2 days, I was posted Tuesday, took meetings Wednesday, Thursday, and by Saturday, this is my decision. This is what I'm going to be doing. And then he can kind of sail off into the sunset and not have to worry about anything until January 15th rolls around, and then he officially signs. But if this is like college football at all, then you might have all these other teams calling him with some NIL money saying, hey, you haven't signed yet. We could do this for you.
Oh, speaking of NIL, Matt.
We don't need to get into it.
Did you want to talk college football?
The players deserve to be paid. I have no problem with that. The system that is in place right now, though, is a complete nightmare. And let's leave it.
Great for me. We signed like the number one recruiting class in the country.
Yeah. I'm having to reevaluate my loyalty to Nike and Phil Knight in light of what's been happening up in Oregon.
No, it's great. It's great. By the way, Jedi Engineer said these boys have never heard of yakisoba bread before, have they? I had not. I just Googled it. Have you heard of yakisoba bread before?
Not off the top of my head, but maybe if you describe it, I might.
I mean, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It looks like a bun of some sort with yakisoba in the middle of it.
Well, there you go.
Look, it's just the vehicle to get me noodles with delicious sauce all over it. Sign me up, Jedi Engineer. I'm interested. But I had not heard of that before. Okay, let's get some other questions here. We do have some Ducks questions. Jedi Engineer, coincidentally, do you think they will bring back Martin now that he's left the Red Sox? I kind of think I'm guessing Chris Martin here.
I'm assuming so.
I just kind of think they're probably kind of done with like major additions to the bullpen would be my guess.
Well, I mean, is Chris Martin a major addition? Like he might come on a 1 year because Brazier's still under contract.
Brazier's still under contract.
Yeah, I mean,
I guess I'm thinking like the rest are going to be dudes on like minor league deals is my instinct.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, let's get to some more of these. Dave says Roki Sasaki would be taking the last spot and block Buehler, so Sasaki would need to come off the board first if Buehler were to return. When would Buehler sign? Roki Sasaki would not immediately go to the 40-man roster when he signs. He could sign a minor league contract. That's what most international free agents do. So he would only have to be added to the 40-man roster once he was made active in a major league game, which wouldn't be until opening day, well after the 60-day IL opens up. So there's not really a competition here for spots because of the sequencing here, unless I'm missing something, Matt.
No, you're not. But I feel like maybe Dave is just referencing it more in terms of like spots in the rotation. Which, I mean, yeah, like it is, it's sort of, it can get crowded very quickly. But conversely, like I've thought about this a lot because, I know Blake isn't high on Buehler.
That was the nicest possible way you could put it. I like it.
My stance is, look, if it takes 3 years for Walker Buehler, short of it being, like 25 AAV like type thing, like if it takes 3 years instead of 2, in my opinion, do it. I know that people who've been on here with us over the past few weeks, I've said, if you win one World Series, if Walker Buehler contributes to one World Series in those 3 years, that contract is worth it.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like, yes, re-sign Buehler, even if it is 3 years, and it gives you a little bit of flexibility to figure out what you're going to do with the Dustin Mays, the Tony Gonsolins of the world. And how I sort of look at that is the Dodgers I've said this time and time again, the Dodgers are playing for championships.
Yeah.
It's not about the regular season. And if you go into the playoffs, if I asked you, Jeff, out of May, Gonsolin, and Buehler, who are you trusting in October the most?
Oh, I mean, where I stand.
Right. Like it's obvious, right?
10 straight scoreless innings last time I checked.
Right. So looking at it from that standpoint, like May is obviously young. I think younger than Gonsolin. I don't think is a if they were to trade him, I don't know. I don't think you look back and say, man, why did the Dodgers trade Tony Gonsolin? Potentially with Dustin May, depending on if he's able to get his career back on track and stay healthy. Like he's had some bad breaks there, but that's where I land. But I do agree, Dave, that with the likelihood of Roki, coming to the Dodgers, like the rotation is getting a little crowded, but I think the Dodgers could alleviate that by figuring out how they trade some of their depth.
Yeah, I mean, I was just mapping it out. I mean, Snell, Glasnow, Yamamoto are locks for the top of the Dodgers rotation if you think Glasnow's elbow is going to be fine. If they were to sign Sasaki and Buehler, that's number 4 and 5. Then you've got Gonsolin, May, Bobby Miller, Clayton Kershaw when he gets healthy. But I mean, if you're going 6-man rotation, I actually don't think that this gets too crowded. I think there's room for both of those guys to sign just because of how many of these guys are injured. Like Gavin Stone is not going to be available. Like Emmett Sheehan, River Ryan, like a lot of these. Landon Knack is in the mix, but he can spend some time in the minor leagues. I just think these, much like Conforto and Teoscar Hernandez, they play the same position, but I don't think one signing is going to prevent the other necessarily, would be my answer. Hawaiian Kira asks, Jeff, will you be at the Rose Bowl for the game? I will not, sadly, but I didn't realize until yesterday that Oregon is playing in the Rose Bowl on January 1st. That's the quarterfinal game, which is sick. So shout out to the Ducks going to the Rose Bowl. I was there when we beat Russell Wilson in Wisconsin. It was one of the greatest moments of my life. Incredible atmosphere. So there you go.
It's good to see somehow some tradition has still been preserved in this new age of college football.
Fowler and Herbie calling the game. I'm fired up for it already. January 1st can't get here soon enough. We got a few weeks, Let's see. Noisy Ninja said this. Nez, you mentioned Nez, Otani's agent. He said they talked to some teams that didn't see the value of Shohei in regard to off the field money. That's insane. Thoughts? It was in the USA Today article. I have not seen this. If this is true, those people should be fired from their jobs.
He did say that. He didn't specify which teams. I'm reading between the lines. I'm inclined to believe the Angels may have been one of them, although the Angels also had Otani in-house. And so,
speaking of Otani, I forgot people in the comments pointing out, I did not include him in my 6-man rotation. So there you go. Sasaki, Buehler, and Otani, although Otani's not going to be ready at the beginning of the season.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that was an interesting comment from Nez, or quote, if you will. Yeah, I like I said, part of me thinks maybe Angels, but they did have him. They did get a bunch of sponsorships. Maybe they felt like at $700 million, they weren't going to be able to get any ROI on that, which obviously the Dodgers weren't concerned about. And I not joked. I mean, I've seriously, like I've shared with you guys every week. It seemed like after the Otani signing, we were getting a new press release, of a sponsorship deal the Dodgers had signed. So I think that worked out just fine for them.
Yeah, absolutely. We got this. Michael wants to know, is Blake on suicide watch for not signing Juan Soto? We haven't heard from him in the chat. He was here at the very beginning, because keep in mind, his guy Willie Adames also off the board. He told us that he was crying tonight, right?
Yes, I'm trying to find how he worded it exactly, but he did say, if the chat asked to let you guys know, he might have even said weeping the past 2 days because Adames and Soto came off the board. Oh yeah, here we go. Okay, Soto and Adames sign elsewhere on back-to-back days. I'm crying if anyone in the chat asks. So not weeping. He said crying.
Are you okay, by the way? Conforto possibly taking Jock Peterson's spot on this roster? Are you going to be okay, Matt?
It was a little disappointing. I was also starting to talk myself into, is there a Bellinger reunion around the corner? Are the Cubs going to pay his salary?
They're dark times. Well, I mean, hey, if Teoscar doesn't sign, we just said there's another opening for another outfielder. So there you go. There you go. Shota asks, with Adames signing with the Giants, do you want the Dodgers to sign a shortstop? Ha-Sung Kim's a name that I've been talking about for 12 months. That was before he had shoulder surgery. Obviously, Tommy Edman is extended. Mookie Betts is going to be playing infield. What do you think? I mean, we could talk Adames contract in a second, but Dodgers signing a shortstop, is this a position of need in your estimation?
No, and that's why I never fully bought into the Adames thing, especially once they signed Snell. I wasn't sure if they would then spend big on shortstop, just because Tommy Edman can play it. Mookie Betts may end up there depending on what happens with Gavin Lux. So yeah, stuff like that.
Adames, real quick. I was doing some digging prior to a bunch of news happening and thinking we would be talking Willie Adames tonight. Last year, he set a career high in wins above replacement, home runs, RBIs, and runs. His weighted runs created plus went up 25. It was 94 2 years ago, 119 last year. 40th percentile in hard hit rate, in exit velocity. Lots of swing and miss. His defense graded out as 68th percentile. His speed has dropped every single year. It was 50th percentile last year. All I'm saying is I love that the Giants signed this contract, Matt, because I think this is a guy. I think this contract is going to be ugly in like 18 months. I think 18 months from now, we're looking at Adames's contract and we're like, holy smokes. Do you remember when they gave that one out?
So you think it's a Xander Bogaerts deal?
Yeah. Chris Bryant. I mean, you take your pick of the NL West. Yeah, I don't think he's a difference maker. Like you said, hey, Buster Posey filled a major need. I'm like, yeah, I mean, technically he signed, we thought 6 for 150 was crazy. He gave him 7, like this deal would terrify me if I was a Giants fan.
That's fair. I mean, I think there was already some talk though, moving him to third base, right?
Which is even crazier. It's like the Bogaerts deal. You can't pay a guy shortstop money and then move him. The whole point of paying him the money is that he plays shortstop.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see. I wouldn't fully be surprised if what you foresee does come true.
Yeah. Scott's in the chat as well. Scott, it's Adames. You're another Adames guy. So, apologies to you. Eden asks, when should we expect Walker Buehler to sign? He isn't being held up by Juan Soto. Look at that picture. Will Smith and Austin Reeves. How about that as a duo right there? This is Eden's my kind of person right here. Those are two guys I'll root for. What do you think?
Yeah. Tough to say. I mean, I think, it wasn't necessarily being held up by Soto. Maybe within the next, I honestly don't know. I was going to say maybe 2 weeks or so, but
do you think winter meetings? I mean, winter meetings start today. Do you think there's a chance he's signed in the next week?
I mean, a chance, but I don't think it's very high because I sort of feel like maybe Flaherty and some of those guys will go first.
Yeah,
but
it's interesting because Boyd, some of the guys that the Mets have signed, like a bunch of those guys have sort of come off the market in the range. What's interesting is, and I try not to put too much stock in much of this, but I was reading something, I forget where. So basically, they think Walker Buehler is going to sign a 1-year deal.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
They were just because I had seen everybody going 2-3 years, which is I still assume what is going to be the case. But it was somebody saying that they still think that Walker Buehler is going to sign like a 1-year prove it deal, essentially on the back of the regular season he just had, which was shocking to me. So I'm not saying I believe it. I'm just telling you I read this, and it wasn't nowhere. It wasn't like I wasn't reading some Bleacher Report article. With all due respect to Bleacher Report, so I don't know.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Timmy wants to know: can the Dodgers offer Honeywell Jr. a 12-year, $500 million contract now?
Yeah, they can offer it if they choose to. How much of this is going to be deferred, though? That's the big question. That might be the deal breaker for Honeywell.
How much of it's deferred? You think he wants all that money up front?
Yeah, I think he wants it all up front.
Oh, maybe it was in an article that was talking about Buehler to the Cubs. Now it's going to bother me because I don't know where.
I know that was some of the Cubs stuff. It was alluding to they're looking at pitchers who don't have the qualifying offer, that because they already spent a little bit, because they still have Bellinger on their books, that they're maybe not going to be big spenders.
Yeah.
What I thought, maybe not to completely sidebar us, but the Tigers being interested in a reunion with Flaherty was kind of interesting. That would be funny.
Yeah. What do you make? I mean, it's funny because Flaherty, like when we were planning out the show, it was like, oh, we should talk about Flaherty. I'm like, I kind of forget that this guy's a Dodger. I mean, all due respect, World Series champ Jack Flaherty, local kid, but I don't know. There's something about it that I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. He was.
Yeah, I mean, I think for to that point, I think it's just how his last time pitching went, and how that game, not only that, but then how that game ended with a fellow free agent, Walker Buehler, having the moment that he did. Like, that has become obviously a significant headline. But yeah, I mean, Flaherty, I saw something saying like he could end up, I think, signing for 4 years, maybe 5. It was projected, so he should still look. Starting pitching in general is, it's a good time to be a free agent right now if you're a starting pitcher, because money is being thrown around pretty freely.
Okay, I found it. MLB trade rumors, by the way. This is the paragraph talking about it's titled Cubs considering Walker Buehler further rotation help. Buehler would also likely fall into this category, as is widely assumed that the righty will sign a 1-year pact as something of a pillow contract in the wake of a disappointing 2024 season. Why that disappointment was certainly tempered by a couple of great postseason outings and a championship ring with the Dodgers. Buehler's regular season saw him post a 5.38 ERA with a host of below average secondary metrics over 75 in the third innings. I don't think Blake Williams wrote that. I could be wrong about it, but anyways, for context, MLB trade rumors was where I read that. So there you go.
Yeah, I completely disagree. Maybe what's the date on that? Is it recent? Well, it's recent if it's talking about the Cubs.
December 7th.
Cubs stuff. Yeah, no, I mean, look, if Buehler only signs for 1 year, then I'll come back on here and say I'm surprised, I was wrong. But I don't see, if starting pitchers, if the market is what it is for them right now, why wouldn't he, unless he's not getting those same offers, which the A's, I think, tried to throw, like, if the A's seem to be throwing a little bit of money around, I'm inclined to believe there was interest between the Oakland / Sacramento / Las Vegas baseball team and Walker Buehler. So I would imagine that they would have tried to lure him there with a little bit of extra money. And again, considering what the market is, like, I don't know. Again, unless Buehler just isn't getting those offers, like a 1-year deal would not make sense to me, because then if he signs that 1-year contract, and struggles again in the regular season and maybe doesn't have quite the same level of playoff success, then what?
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I was surprised by reading it as well, which is why I remembered reading it. So there you go. I am Donovan, $20 super chat. Does not think of Gavin Lux the same way I do. He said Lux needs to be thrown out like the trash he is. A couple of weeks of productivity does not make a ball player. Let him take his noodle arm and head case. Go ring a bell. You guys are great. Keep it up. I am always fascinated. Look, we appreciate the super chat, Donovan. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of it. Like, it's amazing to me that because the atrocious first half happened first, it's completely colored the way people think of the guy. Like, I imagine what would have happened if Gavin Lux got off to the hot start that he did. It flipped his halves. If he had the second half performance in the first half, and we weren't talking about the noodle arm, and I mean, the head case stuff is nonsense, but whatever. There's a lot of nonsense going around. To me, it's just, it's so fascinating to me, the way that people look at Gavin Lux. I'll just leave it at that.
I'm more, maybe not as bullish on Lux as you are. I'm certainly more pro Gavin Lux than a lot of, I think, our viewers and followers are. He did have he came out of the second half strong. He won NL Player of the Week and stuff like that, but then he did also cool off again. Ultimately, I think Lux's production is somewhere in the middle of what we've seen, like the two extremes.
Yeah.
I do think that, and I remember saying this at the time of the 2024 season starting and a couple months into it. Look, he went a full year without playing baseball. Like,
yeah,
we hear from players coming off the injured list of 2 weeks and 1 month saying, it's hard you lose your timing. It's hard to find that again. So can you imagine that feeling for a full year?
Yeah.
I think that is a factor. I know that, it's not necessarily an excuse. It is a results kind of business in sports. So I get that. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's still, I think just with the Dodgers roster, though, I'm not sure how Lux fits kind of long term. It's just my thing. It's not necessarily a matter of, I think he's the worst player in the world, get him off the team, this and that, which that's always ironic to me, right? Like fans complaining about how bad a player is and they need to trade him. Well, if you think he's that bad, who's going to want him in a trade? But yeah, I think it's more just, for me at least, it's just about roster fit kind of moving forward.
Yeah. Again, I don't think it's a coincidence that a guy has a massive knee injury, is terrible for the first 3 months after the knee injury, and then gets better. Like, again, I don't think he's as good. And I've said this and it triggers all sorts of people. So maybe plug your ears. He was better offensively, according to weighted runs created plus, in the second half of last season than Teoscar Hernandez was. The same guy that everyone's about to lose their minds. And oh, by the way, Gavin Lux is a better defender than Teoscar Hernandez. I am not saying Gavin Lux is better than Teoscar Hernandez. I'm just putting out a point of context, a point of reference for folks. So I don't think it's crazy to think he's going to be better next year the further he gets away. He is 26 years old, just turned 26, he just turned 27 16 days ago. Let's remember this. Gavin Lux had the game-tying RBI in Game 5 of the World Series, hit a sac fly that also advanced Mookie Betts to third base and allowed him to score, advanced the runner to third base that allowed Mookie Betts to knock in the game-winning run. So let's just, let's just keep that in mind as well. So I actually would go the opposite. Like, what's interesting to me, Matt, is as they spend this money, I think, look, the Dodgers could spend $18 million a year at every position if they wanted. I think it makes guys like Gavin Lux more valuable because when you can find a solid player that plays a position of need and plays it on a rookie contract, I actually think that makes him more. I mean, look around. They don't have a single other guy other than maybe Andy Pages who's not getting paid at least $10 million a year when you go around the diamond. So I think that actually makes Gavin Lux more valuable to the organization in some ways.
That's fair. That's a great point. From a financial standpoint, absolutely. For me, I trace it back to, I don't see, even if Mookie plays shortstop this year and it keeps Gavin Lux around one more season, fine. I don't see Mookie's move to the infield being permanently at shortstop. So because of that, I think it's more, that's where I'm basing it out of. Look, the Dodgers could say 2 months, they could go to spring training and say, look, yeah, we thought Mookie was going to play infield again. We've decided to keep him in right field. And Gavin Lux is going to be on the team and all is well. You figure it'll fit fine from that sense. I should have added the qualifier and explained that my train of thought stems from an expectation that Mookie will end up at second base moving forward, whether it's at some point in 2025 or 2026.
Yeah. Yeah. And DM, he had a sack fly one time that warrants him a roster spot. Look, if you don't want to listen to anything we say and then take one half of one sentence out of context, DM, you are more than welcome to do that. But I think you missed like the 90 seconds of me talking right before that. So there you go. And again, Scott's in the comments. Scott disagrees with me, and that's fine. I'm perfectly fine being on this. I've joked before. Everybody said the same thing about Gavin Lux, and then he hit really, really well in the second half of the season. And those people stopped talking quite as loudly, but they're back now, and that's fine. So there we go. I think that's all the questions I've got. Here we go. Hawaiian Kira asked this. We'll end on this. If no other outfielder is signed, will Mookie stay in right field?
I mean, I guess maybe, probably, but I don't really see a world in which, like, if the Dodgers were to miss out on Teoscar Hernandez, I think they figure out a way. If it's not signing an outfielder, then they trade for one.
Yeah,
I don't see. So it's Teoscar or an outfielder, in my opinion.
So you think basically Mookie's going to be an infielder, and if it's not Teoscar, they'll go sign another outfielder.
I believe so, or trade for one. Like I don't.
Yeah, Luis Robert.
I mean, I didn't want to say the name.
Yeah. There you go. What'd you say? You don't want to say the name?
I didn't want to say the name just because I feel like he's almost as polarizing as Juan Soto's name was.
There you go. Hey, Dalton Rushing, as Eden points out at some point.
No.
I mean, and Ben Badler was on here. If you missed the interview with Ben Badler of Baseball America, talking prospects, Roki Sasaki, all that up, he said from his reports, the people he talked to, that Rushing actually did grade out pretty well defensively as an outfielder for what it's worth. So there's a guy who's plugged in saying that. So that'll do it for us, folks. We appreciate you joining us. Again, a busy night in Major League Baseball. Juan Soto signs a $765 million contract. The Dodgers signed Michael Conforto. The Dodgers re-signed Blake Treinen. And yet there is still much to come. Winter meetings start this week, so I'm sure we will have a lot to talk about over the coming days. So we appreciate you joining us. As always, check out DodgerBlue.com for all the latest news and updates. DodgerBlue1958 on social media as well. That is Matthew Moreno. I am Jeff Spiegel, folks. Enjoy the rest of your night. And as always, go Dodgers.